Something strange went viral out of China last year. A video. Millions of views. A man holding a roll of toilet paper. And the caption said something that made people stop scrolling. This roll never runs out. That is what people were sharing. That is what people were arguing about in comment sections from New York to Nebraska. A toilet paper roll that never ends. Now, before you click away thinking this is nonsense, stay with me. Because the actual story behind that claim is far more interesting than the viral headline. And it has real consequences for every American who walks into a Walmart or a Target and buys a 12-pack of Charmin. Here is what is actually true. China's engineers developed a new type of toilet paper using densified bamboo fiber. The rolls do not literally last forever, but they do deliver 40 to 60% more sheets per roll than a standard American wood pulp roll. Same physical size, same shelf space, significantly more product. That is not magic. That is manufacturing precision. And it is the kind of quiet, unglamorous advantage that tends to get ignored, right up until it cannot be ignored anymore. Americans spend $9 billion on toilet paper every single year. $9 billion. That is more than the GDP of some countries. And almost all of it goes toward rolls made from trees that took 25 to 30 years to grow. China just figured out how to beat that with a plant that grows back in 3 years. If you are enjoying videos like this, please hit the like button because it takes a lot of effort to make these, and subscribe so you do not miss the next one. This is not just a story about toilet paper. It is a story about how China takes an everyday product, engineers the inefficiency out of it, and then scales it globally before American companies even schedule a meeting about it. We are going to go through all of it. The technology, the numbers, the industry, and the question that should actually be making Procter & Gamble nervous right now. Let us start with what is sitting in your bathroom this morning. Go to your bathroom. Pick up your toilet paper roll. Look at it. That soft, white, fluffy roll you are holding? It used to be a tree. A real tree? One that stood in a forest in the American South or in Canada for somewhere between 25 and 30 years before it got cut down, pulped, bleached, and pressed into something you use for 90 seconds and flush away. That is the deal Americans have accepted for decades. And nobody questioned it because nobody had a reason to. Here is the number that should make you pause. The United States uses more toilet paper per person than any other country on Earth. Around 141 rolls per person per year. That adds up to roughly 34 billion rolls consumed annually across the country. 34 billion rolls. From trees, Procter & Gamble makes Charmin. Kimberly-Clark makes Cottonelle and Scott. These two companies alone control the majority of the American toilet paper market. Their entire supply chain is built around one thing: virgin wood pulp from softwood trees. That supply chain took decades to build. The mills, the forests, the contracts, the machinery, all of it optimized for wood. And here is the problem with optimizing for wood. Wood is slow. Trees do not care about your quarterly earnings report. You cut one down, you wait a generation before it comes back. Bamboo does not work that way. Bamboo is technically a grass. It grows 3 feet in a single day under the right conditions. You harvest it, and it comes back in 3 to 5 years. Not 25, not 30, 3 to 5. The raw material gap between what American companies are using and what China is using is not small. It is generational. Literally, that is the foundation of this entire story. And it is hiding in plain sight inside your bathroom right now. Here is a number most Americans have never heard. 7.5 million hectares. That is how much land China has dedicated specifically to bamboo cultivation. Not wild bamboo. Not accidental bamboo. Deliberately planted, systematically managed, industrially harvested bamboo. To put that in terms that make sense, that is roughly the size of South Carolina, entirely covered in one of the fastest-growing plants on the planet. China is not stumbling into this. This is infrastructure. This is decades of state-level planning pointed at one specific plant. And here is why that number matters to you specifically. The United States imports billions of dollars worth of consumer goods from China every single year. When China builds a raw material advantage this large, this deliberate, it does not stay inside China's borders. It moves into global supply chains. It moves into American store shelves. Slowly at first, then all at once. China currently has over 500 documented bamboo species within its borders. 500! American lumber operations work with a handful of tree species. China is working with an entire ecosystem of one plant. The bamboo industry in China is already valued at over $40 billion annually. That is not a niche market. That is not a startup experiment. That is a fully mature industrial sector with government backing, export infrastructure, and decades of manufacturing refinement already baked in. Think about what that means for toilet paper specifically. China is not trying to enter this market. China is already in this market. The question is how fast it scales, and how many American brands get caught flat-footed when it does. That $40 billion number is going to get bigger. The only real question is who benefits from that growth. Right now, the answer is not American consumers. Not yet. Most people think of China as a place that copies things. That framing misses what is actually happening. China does not just copy products. China builds entire systems around raw materials. And bamboo is the clearest example of that strategy working at full scale right now. Here is how the machine works. The Chinese government designated bamboo as a strategic agricultural resource decades ago. That one decision changed everything. It meant subsidies for farmers who grew it. It meant state investment in processing facilities. It meant research funding for engineers figuring out how to turn bamboo into every product imaginable. Toilet paper, flooring, textiles, packaging, construction materials, furniture. China did not pick one application and stop. It industrialized the entire plant. Think of it like this. Imagine if the US government in the 1950s had looked at corn and said, "We are going to build an entire industrial ecosystem around this one crop, not just food. Everything. Fuel, plastics, packaging, textiles, building materials, all from corn." That is the level of coordinated intent China applied to bamboo. And the results are not theoretical. They are sitting on shelves in Asian markets right now. They are moving through shipping containers headed to Europe and Southeast Asia. The American market is next on the list. What makes this particularly hard for US companies to counter is timing. China did not start this last year. This build-out started in the 1980s and 1990s. The infrastructure is mature, the supply chains are established, the manufacturing costs are already optimized. American companies are not competing against a startup. They are competing against a 40-year head start. That is not a gap you close in one product cycle. That is a structural disadvantage. And it shows up most clearly when you look at how the actual product gets made. So, how does the roll actually work? This is where it gets interesting. And this is the part the viral videos never explain. Standard American toilet paper starts with softwood pulp. Trees get cut, chipped, cooked in chemicals, bleached, and pressed into thin sheets. The process creates a soft product. But soft comes at a cost. The fibers are loose, the sheets are thick. You need more of them to get the job done. That is by design. More sheets used means more rolls, bought means more revenue for Procter & Gamble. China's bamboo fiber rolls work differently. Bamboo fiber is naturally stronger than softwood fiber at the cellular level. Think of it like the difference between cheap copy paper and high-quality cardstock. Same basic material category. Completely different structural integrity. Chinese engineers took that stronger fiber and applied a cold-press densification process. Without getting too technical, they compress the bamboo pulp at specific pressure and temperature settings that preserve fiber strength while reducing sheet thickness. The result is a sheet that is thinner but functionally equivalent to a thicker wood pulp sheet. Thinner sheet. Same performance. more sheets per roll, same roll size. That is the 40 to 60% efficiency gain. It is not a gimmick. It is materials engineering applied to a product American companies stopped trying to improve 30 years ago. Here is the analogy that makes it click. Remember when LCD screens replaced old bulky television sets? Same picture. Fraction of the thickness, better technology wins. Eventually, everyone switches. That is exactly what is happening here. Except the product is something every single American household buys every single month without fail. The engineering advantage is real. The question now is why American companies have not matched it. This is the question everyone asks. If bamboo fiber is stronger, faster to grow, and more efficient, why is Charmin still making rolls from trees? The answer is not stupidity. It is not ignorance. It is something far more common in American business. It is sunk cost. Procter & Gamble has spent decades building a supply chain around wood pulp, mills, contracts with timber companies, bleaching facilities, specialized machinery calibrated specifically for softwood fiber processing, billions of dollars of infrastructure all pointed in one direction. Switching to bamboo does not mean buying a new ingredient. It means dismantling and rebuilding an entire industrial system. New supplier relationships, new processing equipment, new chemical treatments, new quality control standards, new logistics networks. That is not a decision a company makes because a competitor across the ocean has a better product. That is a decision a company makes when the market forces their hand. When sales drop, when shelf space shrinks, when consumers start asking questions. And American consumers have not started asking those questions yet. Not loudly enough to move a boardroom. Here is the other piece of this. Charmin and Cottonelle have spent hundreds of millions of dollars marketing softness. Softness is their entire brand promise. Bamboo fiber, even processed correctly, carries a perception problem in the US market. Consumers associate bamboo with hard floors and panda habitats. Not bathroom comfort. That perception gap is actually protecting American brands right now. But perception gaps close, especially when price becomes a factor. When Chinese bamboo rolls hit American shelves at a lower price point with more sheets per roll, that is when the boardroom conversation changes. Fast. That moment is closer than most people think. Here is the thing about this story. It is not new. The pattern playing out in toilet paper right now is the exact same pattern that played out in solar panels, in electric vehicles, in consumer electronics, in steel, in semiconductors. Every single time, the sequence was the same. China identifies a product category. China builds raw material infrastructure around it. China engineers the manufacturing process to reduce cost and improve efficiency. American companies dismiss the early products as cheap or inferior. Then the price drops. Then the quality matches. Then the market shifts. Then American companies are playing catch-up. Solar panels are the clearest example. In 2005, American and German companies dominated solar manufacturing. China looked at that market and made a decision. State subsidies, massive scale, relentless cost reduction. By 2023, China controlled over 80% of global solar panel manufacturing. American solar companies did not lose because they stopped trying. They lost because they could not compete with a 15-year coordinated infrastructure build. Tesla saw this coming in batteries. That is why Elon Musk spent years trying to build US-based gigafactories instead of relying on Chinese supply chains. He understood the pattern. Most American consumer goods companies have not had that moment of clarity yet. Toilet paper feels trivial. It feels beneath the level of strategic concern. That is exactly why it is vulnerable. Nobody in Washington is holding emergency hearings about bamboo fiber processing. Nobody on Wall Street is modeling the supply chain risk to Kimberly-Clark. But the pattern does not care about optics. The pattern just runs. And right now, the pattern is running directly at a $9 billion American market that has not changed its core technology in half a century. This is not hypothetical anymore. The bamboo toilet paper playbook is already in motion. Right now. Today. Companies like Bumbu, Kaboo, and Who Gives a Crap are already selling bamboo-based toilet paper in the United States. They are not Chinese state companies. They are Western brands that recognized the raw material advantage early and built their supply chains around Chinese bamboo processing infrastructure. Who Gives a Crap did over $100 million in revenue last year. From toilet paper, made from bamboo, sold online directly to American households. That is not a small experiment. That is a proven market entry. And it is just the beginning. Here is what the next phase looks like. Chinese manufacturers who currently supply the bamboo pulp to these Western brands start asking a simple question. Why are we selling the ingredient when we could sell the finished product? Why supply the kitchen when we could open the restaurant? That question has already been asked in solar, in electronics, in appliances. The answer is always the same. Eventually, they open the restaurant. When Chinese bamboo toilet paper brands start hitting American e-commerce platforms directly, Amazon, Walmart.com, Target.com, with a price point 20 to 30% lower than Charmin and more sheets per roll, the American consumer does not need a government report to make a decision. They just need a price tag. Amazon already carries multiple bamboo toilet paper brands with thousands of reviews and 4-star ratings. The beachhead is established. Retail shelf space is next. And once a product wins on price and performance in American retail, the incumbent brands face a fight they have never had to fight before. In their own home market. On their own turf. Let us make this personal. Because at the end of this story, it is not about China's industrial policy. It is not about Procter & Gamble's quarterly earnings. It is about what you pay every single month when you walk down the paper goods aisle. The average American household spends around $120 a year on toilet paper alone. That sounds small. But stack it next to paper towels, tissues, and other wood pulp paper products, and that number climbs past $300 annually per household. Now here is what the bamboo efficiency math does to that number. If a bamboo roll delivers 40 to 60% more sheets than a standard wood pulp roll, and costs the same or less on the shelf, your annual spend on toilet paper drops significantly. Not because you changed your habits, because the product is simply more efficient. That is real money. Every year, automatically. And it goes further than just your wallet. The environmental math changes too. Fewer rolls manufactured means less water consumed in processing, less chemical bleaching, less forest pressure. The U.S. paper industry uses more water per ton of product than almost any other manufacturing sector. Bamboo processing requires significantly less. This is the part that tends to surprise people. The bamboo switch is not just an environmental talking point. It is an economic efficiency argument. And economic efficiency arguments tend to win in American retail eventually. Always. The only reason this has not happened faster is infrastructure and perception. Both of those barriers are eroding right now. Quietly. Steadily. By the time most American consumers notice the shift on their grocery shelves, the decision will already have been made for them. The question is whether American companies make that decision, or whether someone else makes it first. So here is where we land. China did not invent toilet paper. America perfected the mass-market version of it, built billion-dollar brands around it, convinced an entire country that soft, thick, and fluffy was the only acceptable standard. And for decades that worked. But somewhere between the quarterly earnings calls and the softness marketing campaigns, American companies stopped asking a basic question. Is there a better way to make this thing? China asked that question. China answered it. And China built a 40-year industrial infrastructure around the answer. The bamboo roll that went viral was not magic. It was not fake. It was the visible tip of something much larger. A systematic, state-coordinated effort to take everyday consumer products, strip out the inefficiency, reduce the cost, and scale globally. It happened in solar. It happened in EVs. It is happening right now in consumer electronics, appliances, and industrial components. Toilet paper is just the latest category. And the most surprising one, Because nobody saw it coming in the bathroom aisle. Here is the real question this video leaves you with. When you walk into Walmart next week and you see a bamboo toilet paper brand sitting next to Charmin, more sheets, lower price, better environmental profile, what do? Most Americans will reach for what is familiar. That is human nature. But familiarity has a price. And that price goes up every year while the alternative gets cheaper. The companies that understand this shift are already repositioning. The ones that do not will spend the next decade wondering how they lost a $9 billion market to a grass. Not a tree. A grass. That is the story. And it is just getting started.